In the kingdom, we have Kingdom Workers Manual and guidance for members. And we also have 3 committees to handle that. The number 1 is the LGCC, or the Counseling Committee, Lower Guidance and Counseling Committee. This belongs to the departments and sections and squads. And the second is the Higher Guidance Counseling Committee, called the HGCC. That belongs to the second one, the cluster and departments. And most serious cases are brought to the Supreme Guidance and Counseling Committee, or SGCC. This is the Central and Senior Board of Administrators. So locally, they solve the problem down to the LGCC, and if it goes beyond that, then they go to the SGCC. And then if it goes beyond that, they cannot solve it, then they go to the Supreme Guidance and Counseling Committee, which is the Central Committee, and the Board of Administrators is in charge of that. Now, in your question, how do we deal with some errant or offensive members, brothers or sisters, and how do we implement discipline among members in the KOJC? First of all, we implement discipline according to our manual of operations. That is the day-to-day operations of the kingdom. It's composed of 3 big books which are defined, and that is where all the day-to-day expectations and characteristics of workers are defined. And if there are errant members, or they have violated, some members or workers have violated those rules and regulations according to the scriptures, then they are called to the committees concerned that I have just spoken to you. And they trace out the problem there. So your question is, how can you prevent church discipline from being abusive, Pastor? So you have 2 questions here. How do you implement discipline? Or 3 questions. One of the hardest things to do is to correct an errant or offensive brother or sister. And some leaders, you said, are afraid that they might react and get back at them. Well, those disciplinary actions taken are very fair. They are not unfair, but they are fair. So both parties, if there are parties concerned, they will be called to those committees and trace out the problem first of all. But the main reason for that discipline is not punitive. It is always to restore. It is always to motivate them to restoration. It's always there to restore. That's why the kingdom way of discipline is with compassion and love. So we reprove, wrongdoings, like what the admonition of Galatians chapter 6 verse 1 says. Reprove one another if anyone is caught in a fault. Can you read that for us?
Verse 1, Pastor. Brethren, if a man be overtaken in a fault, ye which are spiritual, restore such an one in the spirit of meekness, considering thyself, lest thou also be tempted.
That is always the spirit. So this Galatians chapter 6:1 says, if any man be overtaken in a fault, you which are spiritual, restore such an one in the spirit of meekness, considering thyself, lest thou also be tempted. So we always put ourselves into the shoes of the one that is at fault. because we are all undergoing the fire of correction, the fire of cleansing. So we admonish one another with regards to that. And the right motivation is always with love, according to Hebrews chapter 12, verse 5. This is what it says.
Verse 5, and ye have forgotten the exhortation which speaketh unto you as unto children. My son, despise not thou the chastening of the Lord, nor faint when thou art rebuked of him.
Yeah, continue.
Verse 6, for whom the Lord loveth, he chasteneth, and scourgeth every son whom he receiveth.
So the discipline, the rebuke, the correction is a sign of love. So we let our the one at fault understand that discipline sometimes may be grievous or may be painful, but it is a sign that the Father loves you, according to Hebrews chapter 12, verse 5 to 6, or the whole chapter if you may read it. He corrected and he chastened everyone that he accepts as a son. Anyone who avoids that, then he'll not be considered a son, but a bastard, or nothing to a son that nothing to inherit. No inheritance be upon them. So this correction is very important, and we let them understand that. And the purpose of discipline and correction must always be restoration. It must always be restoration, not punitive, first of all, but restoration. 1 Corinthians chapter 5, verse 5, 2 Timothy chapter 2, verse 26, and James 5, 19 to 20. Let's read those verses.
1 Corinthians chapter 5, verse 5, to deliver such an one unto Satan for the destruction of the flesh, that the spirit may be saved in the day of the Lord Jesus.
So spiritual, when at the very extreme, when those who have been corrected did not listen or were very rebellious against discipline, then the last chance is to really save the spirit or the soul. So he may undergo such thing as expulsion from the membership of the covenant, and then we still pray that one day he may come to the senses of being restored back and then save his soul. And 2 Timothy 2:26, this is what it says.
And that they may recover themselves out of the snare of the devil, who are taken captive by him at his will.
So, extreme measures sometimes are necessary, like the, in our case, it's the indefinite suspension of members and then expulsion if they don't want to undergo discipline. Many, they absconded their place in the kingdom because one of the things that people really have to overcome is the pride of life. That when they are being disciplined, instead of facing the fire, they abscond or they leave, and then they just go backslide. So in those cases, we cannot do anything anymore because they are using their freedom of choice to back out. So that is their own responsibility, as long as we have done our best to restore them. And 2 Timothy, that's 2 Timothy, no? James 5:19 to 20, this is what it says.
Verse 19, brethren, if any of you do err from the truth, and one convert him. Verse 20, let him know that he which converteth the sinner from the error of his way shall save a soul from death, and shall hide a multitude of sins.
We always, the aim of discipline, correction, and chastisement is the restoration of that errant soul to the path of righteousness once again, and it is done with compassion and love. And the Apostle Paul in 1 Thessalonians 2, 5-7 says, in doing so, with compassion and love, we must be gentle in handling those souls, because we know that if a soul is unrepented, he'll go to eternal damnation. That's terrible. So we are implementing this with the prayer of gentleness and fruits of the Spirit shown as the wealth of God's compassion and the wealth of God's endurance to save a soul are being manifested through those tutors and governors who are there to correct them. This is what 1 Thessalonians 2, 6-7 says.
Verse 6, nor of men sought we glory, neither of you nor yet of others, when we might have burdensome as the apostles of Christ. But we were gentle among you, even as a nurse cherisheth her children.
That is how we deal with souls, with gentleness. Although the discipline correction is very firm, but what we've shown is not, as I said, vindictiveness or being very punitive about imposing it, but it is always aimed for restoration with compassion, love, and with gentleness. And this is one of the things that people, especially in the Philippines, I have found that out, that people who comes into the kingdom, they are so rich in the pride of life. You know, you can touch everything about them, but not their pride. And this is one of the things that the Father wanted to eliminate from you to become spiritual. It is the pride of life. Not many people can take discipline. They misunderstood it and they take it the other way. That spirit of being always the victim, you know. They don't understand the wisdom and understanding behind discipline and correction. They don't understand it is because the Father loves them. Many people are blocked from that kind of understanding. They always misunderstood it as if you are really belittling them or discriminating them or being vindictive to them or making them like feel like a victim always. That is always the mentality that we encounter in the kingdom when it comes to discipline. But most kingdom citizens are now being open to that, you know. Yes, there is pain, there is embarrassment, and sometimes people wanted to save face in the midst of embarrassment. Instead of confronting their fault and sin, they backfire. That's not the word. They tend to see you as the oppressor when you correct them and discipline them. That's why some of the leaders, you know, they skip from those kind of responsibilities of imposing discipline, correction, rebuke. Might be an open rebuke, you know, that we do so that others may learn from those lessons. But they tend to misunderstand that, and the embarrassment to them is so great that they prefer sometimes to just live and backslide. But that is the weakness. When you want to go to heaven, you must face the positive and the negative fire of your life. As in 1 Corinthians chapter 3, 10-15. And you cannot escape that. So the admonition I gave them is when you're facing the fire, and all of us will undergo that, I'm the first one who underwent those kind of discipline from above. The only solution to, overcoming your pride of life is humility. Try humility. Other have saved those kind of spirits like pride of life implanted within us. That is the very thing that the Father wanted to get out of you, the pride of life. So don't defend it, just surrender it. And then be humble and accept it. And then wisdom will come to you because you will have the fear of the Lord, and that will be the beginning of wisdom. That the Father will open your eyes and mind and say, oh, wow, I thank you, Father, for the discipline because it opened my mind to know that you are doing this because you love me. So, that is always the case, That's why here we are not afraid to even rebuke someone openly. So when it's brought to the committee, there are people there that are also members who have undergone and are able to overcome and are considered your tutors and governors. You face them. And then they reveal to you what you have done. So, is it because they want to put you to shame or embarrass you or, discriminate you or offend you? No, that's not the reason why. First of all, you have to confront your fault, your sin. And then, openly, you are called to the committee. And then, lay down what you have done. And it's an open rebuke for you. So that later on you will understand that this is how God disciplines His church. I don't know about other churches. I don't know about other, those who are not in the kingdom, how they implement those disciplines amongst them. In the kingdom, that is the way. Because we follow the scriptures also. In Proverbs 27, 5-6, this is what it says.
Verse 5, open rebuke is better than secret love. Faithful are the wounds of a friend, but the kisses of an enemy are deceitful.
Faithful are the wounds of a friend, but the kisses of an enemy are deceitful. So it's better to be inflicted with pain because of your pride of life from a friend than for an enemy to flatter you, and let you go to hell. It's just like going to a doctor if you have a cancer in the body, and the cancer is now showing itself, manifesting itself below the surface and coming out of the skin. When you go to the doctor, if your doctor doesn't want to hurt you because of surgery, he will just say, put a bandage over it. It will be okay. Some other people discipline people like that. They don't want them to be offended. They don't want them to undergo such rigorous discipline. In the kingdom, we don't. If we see you have a fault, you have a cancer, we let you face that kind of a problem, tell you about it, and then if you submit yourself, then we'll make a spiritual surgery so that you may live and the cancer would die. Amen. That is the serpent seed. That is the cancer of the spirit, is the pride of life. That is the cancer of the spirit. We will take it out. It's painful, but it will save you and make you way to heaven with God forever. But if you just say, oh, okay, we are still friends, we will not offend you, we will not even mention your fault, then we are friends. We are not really friends. I'm treating you as my enemy. Because if I do that, you're going to hell. And I will be responsible for that. And we exhaust all means to restore the offender. And if he remains impenitent, we admonish him not as an enemy, but as a brother. So, that is what I'm telling you all along. That's why we have the lower committee, the middle committee, and the Supreme Committee. We exhaust all means to solve those problems, faults, and let them face it. You cannot solve a problem without the problem maker facing his own problem. And then, give him a chance to speak, to solve his own problem that he made. First of all, it is not us who will solve it for him. It is him. For example, an errant member, an errant worker would borrow money from other members. For example, he's a minister, and the Kingdom Nations register of ministers are there, and he's one of them. So the kingdom is responsible for him. So this certain minister would borrow money without asking permission from the committee or to the leaders. And then he fails to pay his debt. And both of them are at fault. The member did not ask permission, minister did not ask permission, and then there's a problem that this minister of borrow cannot pay the money. And they are both in the kingdom. One is a minister, one is a member. And the problem would be brought to us. So who will solve that problem? You made the problem, find a solution to that problem, and we'll help you. So that is how, that's just an example of how we confront those faults and problems of some workers probably, or members who have violated some of the rules that would keep the peace and unity in the body. So, after that, after a while, we come to a solution, and the problem maker would also be part of the solution, or not sometimes, not only a part, but he has to be the solution because he made that problem. And he went into that kind of a problem, and he must provide us right now with a solution. If not, we could help him, and find a solution to that kind of problem. That is how we do it in the kingdom. We're fair and just in everything that we do. So we admonish them, not as an enemy, but as brothers. 2 Thessalonians 3:14-15. Please read.
Verse 14. And if any man obey not our word by this epistle, note that man, and have no company with him, that he may be ashamed. 15. Yet count him not as an enemy, but admonish him as a brother.
So, the violator, will be admonished. And when he's confronted with a problem like that, he is bound to defend himself, and spill some of his sympathy to himself to other members who might be infected by his reasons why he's doing it, although at the back of the leaders. So we don't do that. We avoid that. So Paul said, let him not have company with others while he has that problem. Like, for example, you contract COVID. Even though you're my loved one, I have to separate you. I have to isolate you, or else you will all infect all of us. So that is the reason why we have to isolate the fault and the offender, and not count him, not as an enemy, but still a brother. But let him confront his own wrongdoing and his fault, and then restore himself, it may need be. When he is repentant, then we send him to the spiritual rehabilitation center of either Kitbog Mountain or Glory Mountain to pray, to fast, and to restore himself in the spiritual realm of righteousness, so that once restored, he can go back to the mainstream of the spiritual body of the kingdom. So he must be repentant, he must accept his fault, and he must confront it, and he must change his ways. Then when he has done that, he can go back again and be restored back to the mainstream body of the kingdom nation. Praise the Father.